Hi everyone. Okay, today we're going to read Genesis chapter 30 and then Matthew. Oh, I forgot which chapter, but I'll look it up. Oops. Okay. When Rachel saw that she had borne Jacob no children, she became envious of her sister. And Rachel said to Jacob, "Give me children, or I shall die." Jacob was incensed at Rachel and said, "Can I take the place of God, who has denied you fruit of the womb?" She said, "Here." She said, "Here's my maid Bilhah. Consort with her, that she may bear on my knees, and that through her I too may have children." So she gave him her maid Bilhah as concubine, and Jacob cohabited with her. Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son, and Rachel said, "God has vindicated me. Indeed, he has heeded my plea and given me a son." Therefore she named him Dan. Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son, and Rachel said, "A fateful contest I waged with my sister. Yes, and I have prevailed." So she named him Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took her maid Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as concubine. And when Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son, Leah said, "What luck!" So she named him Gad. When Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, Leah declared, "What fortune!" meaning, "Women will deem me fortunate." So she named him Asher. Once at the time of the wheat harvest, Reuben came upon some mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, "Please, give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Was it not enough for you to take away my husband, that you would also take my son's mandrakes?" Rachel replied, "I promise he shall lie with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came home from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You are to sleep with me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." And he lay with her that night. God heeded Leah, and she conceived and bore him a fifth son. And Leah said, "God has given me my reward for having given my maid to my husband." So she named him Issachar. When Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son, Leah said, "God has given me a choice gift. This time my husband will exalt me, for I have borne him 6 sons." So she named him Zebulun. Last, she bore him a daughter and named her Dinah. Now God remembered Rachel. God heeded her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said, "God has taken away my disgrace." So she named him Joseph, which is to say, "May the Lord add another son for me." After Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, Give me leave to go back to my own homeland. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, that I may go, for well you know what services I have rendered you." But Laban said to him, "If you will indulge me, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me on your account." And he continued, "Name the wages due for me, and I will pay you." But he said, "You know well how I have served you, and how your livestock has fared with me, for the little you had before I came has grown to much, since the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. And now, when shall I make provision for my own household?" He said, "What shall I pay you?" And Jacob said, "Pay me nothing. If you will do this thing for me, I will again pasture and keep your flocks. Let me pass through your whole flock today, removing from there every speckled and spotted animal, every dark-colored sheep, and every spotted and speckled goat. Such shall be my wages. In the future, when you go over my wages, let my honesty toward you testify for me. If there are among my goats any that are not speckled or spotted, or any sheep that are not dark-colored, they got there by theft." And Laban said, "Very well, let it be as you say." But that same day he removed the streaked and spotted he-goats and all the speckled and spotted she-goats, every one that had white on it, and all the dark-colored sheep, and left them in the charge of his sons. And he put a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob was pasturing the rest of Laban's flock. Jacob then got fresh shoots of poplar and of almond and plane, and peeled white stripes in them, laying bare the white of the shoots. The rods that he had peeled he set up in front of the goats in the troughs, the water receptacles that the goats came to drink from. Their mating occurred when they came to drink, and since the goats mated by the rods, the goats brought forth streaked, speckled, and spotted young. But Jacob dealt separately with the sheep. He made these animals face the streaked or wholly dark-colored animals in Laban's flock, and so he produced special flocks for himself, which he did not put with Laban's flocks. Moreover, when the sturdier animals were mating, Jacob would place the rods in the troughs in full view of the animals, so that they mated by the rods. But with the feebler animals he would not place them there. Thus the feeble ones went to Laban, and the sturdy to Jacob. So the man grew exceedingly prosperous, and came to own large flocks, maidservants and menservants, camels and asses. Okay, well, that's the end of Genesis chapter 30, and a lot of, it was interesting, a lot of mating going on. I'm glad Henry and Guster are sleeping. Perish the thought that they should hear these things, since they're eunuchs. Anyway, here's Gussie. Okay, well, let's read Matthew. I mean, sometimes the Bible, reads kind of like a soap opera. I would say an ancient soap opera with a lot of dysfunction junction. But maybe that should give us, hope, because we have a lot of drama in our lives too. Or maybe we don't. Okay, Matthew chapter 22. Jesus spoke to them again in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his servants to those who had been invited to the banquet to tell them to come, but they refused to come. Then he sent some more servants and said, 'Tell those who have been invited that I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fatted cattle have been butchered, and everything's ready. Come to the wedding banquet.' But they paid no attention and went off, one to his field, another to his business. The rest seized his servants, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged. He sent his army and destroyed those murderers and burned their city. Then he said to his servants, 'The wedding banquet is ready, but those I invited did not deserve to come. So go to the street corners and invite to the banquet anyone you find.' So the servants went out into the streets and gathered all the people they could find, the bad as well as the good. And the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he noticed a man there who was not wearing wedding clothes. He asked, 'How did you get in here without wedding clothes, friend?' The man was speechless. Then the king told the attendants, 'Tie him hand and foot and throw him outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are invited, but few are chosen.' Then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap him in his words. They sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians. "Teacher," they said, "we know that you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by others, because you pay no attention to who they are. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not?" But Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, "You hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax." They brought him a denarius, and he asked them, "Whose image is this, and whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Then he said to them, "So, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." And then he said to them, I'm repeating. When they heard this, they were amazed. So they left him and went away. That same day, the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to him with a question. "Teacher," they said, "Moses told us that if a man dies without having children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up offspring for him. Now, there were 7 brothers among us. The first one married and died, and since he had no children, he left his wife to his brother. The same thing happened to the second and third brother, right on down to the 7th. Finally, the woman died. Now, then, at the resurrection, whose wife will she be of the 7, since all of them were married to her?" Jesus replied, "You are in error, because you do not know the Scriptures or the power of God. At the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven. But about the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what God said to you? 'I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.' He is not the God of the dead, but of the living." When the crowds heard this, they were astonished at his teaching. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question. "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments." While the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them, "What do you think about the Messiah? Whose son is he?" "The son of David," they replied. He said to them, "How is it then that David, speaking by the Spirit, calls him Lord? For he says, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet.' If then David calls him Lord, how can he be his son?" No one would say a word in reply, and from that day on, no one dared to ask him any more questions. That's the end of Matthew 22. I'm debating as to whether I should read this too, but the video is kind of long. This is from First Century Study Bible. I'll maybe read a little bit of commentary. The name Sadducee is derived from the word Zadok, which means righteous or just. Zadok was the name of the first high priest under David and Solomon. Zadok was a descendant of Phinehas, the grandson of Aaron, who was promised an eternal priesthood. The prophet Ezekiel promised a special place for the sons of Zadok in his vision of a future temple. It's possible that the Sadducees were descendants of Zadok, or perhaps they made this claim in order to justify their leadership. It's difficult to get a complete picture of the Sadducees because what is known about them comes from the writings of their opponents. They appear to have been a small but powerful group. The Sadducees seem to have come to power as a religious and political group sometime around the Maccabean Revolt in 167 BC. Interesting. There's more about the Sadducees. Well, the Sadducees, you know that old joke that I've heard a lot of pastors say about the Sadducees. They were sad, you see, because they didn't believe in the resurrection. Har, 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 har. Anyway, okay, I'm going to keep this shorter, even though it's now a long video. But thank you for listening, and God bless. Henny and Guster say God bless too. Bye.